welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. I am Eric Miskell with EMS Now. And today my guest is Francisco Almada Lobo. He is the CEO and co-founder of Critical Manufacturing. And we wanted to take the opportunity to learn more about critical manufacturing. They're getting a lot of recognition in the industry, so I thought it appropriate to bring on Francisco and ask him to tell us about himself and the company. So Francisco, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Absolutely. Let me begin by asking you, just introduce yourself and tell us who Critical Manufacturing is.
All right, very good. So let me start with critical manufacturing. And so critical manufacturing is a very specialized provider of manufacturing software, focusing essentially on manufacturing execution systems. We do that focused on complex advanced segments, including semiconductor, electronics, medical devices, and industrial equipment. We were created in 2009, so I am one of the co-founders of the company. We came from the semiconductor industry. We were part of semiconductor for many years, we were at the time, we like to say that we're on the other side, because we were doing MES projects, but we're doing MES projects based on products from other vendors. And we would create different variations, different customizations, and then we'll deploy in the companies that I work for. We'll deploy these products into different factories that the company had. But I had a very large team doing that, something like 150 people just doing that. Okay, so that you understand the size of what we were doing back then. So then this company, this very big semiconductor company, went insolvent. And we've decided that this should not be the end of this story. First of all, we have accumulated a very significant knowledge in terms of manufacturing execution systems. We believe that none of those, we're not happy with any of the ones that we're using, because we thought that, in terms of technology, scalability, usability, and we can talk a little bit more about that, the solutions in the market were not up to date. So we're starting to feel a little bit like, sometimes we even talk about this today, that we're used to some consumer-like applications with great usability and so on. And then we go into the manufacturing space and things are dull, black, and without all this engagement, which is necessary in such applications. And that was kind of the starting point. Said, okay, how can we do this better? How can we apply technology that essentially is being applied already to other segments, and do something for this manufacturing industry, and that was it. And then we started 2009, as I said. Nothing went as expected, because in the early years there's a kind of a more or less naive perspective on how businesses are built. And then we learned by ourselves, and around 2010, 2011, things started to, grow. We getting better results. We got our product out. We started growing, and since then, we've only had growth, positive results ever since. And so it has been really a great journey. Just to explain a little bit, because of the electronic side. So we were essentially initially a semiconductor, and then we started going into other, we called it adjacent segments. So segments that were somehow related to the original one. Electronics was one of them. And we ended up dedicating more and more to electronics after 2018, when the company was acquired by ASMPT. And so we now belong to this larger group, still working independently in the software business, but belonging to this larger group, and with a much greater focus as well on the two segments where ASM is quite strong, which is semiconductor on one side and electronics SMT on the other.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And you've already addressed this somewhat, but your position within these industries is as a core MES provider then, right? To help with the manufacturing processes.
It is. Although we look at the MES in a kind of let me say a broader way, that includes on one side the automation, So including the integration to equipment, not necessarily like some of vendors or companies do this today, which is for them integration is essentially to gather data and do some kind of analysis or traceability of the data. Yes, this is one part of it, but in a more sophisticated way, because what we're talking about usually is bidirectional connectivity.
Yeah.
So this means that we do interlocking scenarios, download programs to the machines, interact with the machines. So things which are much more sophisticated than just this initial level. The automation also covers automation in areas of interfactory logistics. So together with AIVs, fleet management solutions, so all the automation part. Then the MES itself. The MES itself is a very comprehensive, and we can talk about it later on. Very comprehensive, full of different modules, but basically around the execution portion. And then we finally have the analytics portion, which is all the data analysis, dashboarding, solutions for storage, for machine learning, for applying intelligent algorithms. And so what we say, because you said, are you specific on MES? Yes, maybe not what most persons understand MES is. So it's a kind of a MES plus or augmented MES, if you like.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you, because not all MES are created equal, right? So I guess my question would be, how extensive or comprehensive is your solution then? Because I think of it in terms of 20 years ago, an OEM used the comment that they would like a glass pipeline into their whole manufacturing, right? Purchasing through, so they can see at any time what's where and where the problems are and where production is. How comprehensive is your solution?
Yeah, we'd like to think that it's very comprehensive. It's in terms of how broad it is, but also how deep it goes. Okay, so it's like two dimensions. Is on one side in terms of processes, and starting with that, MES, the original MES systems were basically covering the physical processes. So this means, we had the materials, we had the products, the parts, and so on, and we would manage things across the different flows, across different steps, machines, and so on. So that's essentially the physical processes, and this is kind of the core, let me say, of an MES system. But then, as we started enlarging the scope, the functional scope of the product, we started covering what we call business processes, and so it's engineering, it's quality, it's maintenance, it's logistics, it's all of these functions that are completely interconnected into the physical processes as well. There's almost no difference from a system standpoint between the two, and so it's comprehensive because on one side we deal with automation and traceability and so on, but then we also deal with sampling, with recalls, with all sorts of things, using the same type of system. So we typically say that an MES system covers efficiency, quality, and the window of opportunity. So it's efficiency from the productivity standpoint, increasing the throughput, doing optimizations. We have an advanced planning and scheduling system, which is part of the system itself. So that's the efficiency block. The quality is where we enforce procedures, which is the essence of an MES system. And the way we have traceability, where we ensure also the quality of the products from the quality of the processes themselves, including things like SPC, sampling module, advanced sampling modules, and things like that. And then finally, the new product introduction. So how do we seize the opportunities so that we can quickly ramp up new products inside the factories? So, it's a long answer, but just to explain you a little bit how broad it goes, and then how deep it goes, because, sometimes electronics SMT is complicated. And sometimes we see, for instance, SMT lines being modeled inside an MES as 2 or 3 or 4 steps. And it's way more complicated. And so if you go down to the, to the board level, to the real level, to the component level, it's a completely different level of control and traceability that you get by doing it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that description because, as perfect and, as rational as one would like the process to be, life interferes and problems happen all the time, right? There's always disruptions of some kind within a manufacturing environment that need to be managed. How then, help me a little bit here for the positioning with the MES versus something like a PLM or an ERP. How are those related?
Yeah. We typically say when there's a three, we have the holy grail of manufacturing. Okay, yeah. So it's first of all, they do different things. So the ERP in this area, of course, it covers a lot of areas across the corporation, but in this area, it basically tells the production what needs to be built. What are the orders? What are the customers wanting us to build? Okay, that's the what. The PLM is the who, is the how. Sorry, it's the how, which is what is the bill of materials? What is what are the technical drawings? How does the product need to be built? And then the building itself, it's the MES, and so we need to have tight integration into ERP, so that we understand all the specs of all the specifications of the orders that are coming in, so that we update in real time, or when appropriate, the situation of the orders, when will they be ready, and so on, to the ERP, so that there's information that can flow and can be provided to customers, particularly in high mix situations. And again, the how comes from the PLM, which basically we receive BOM structures, technical drawings, and so on. We use them during the manufacturing processes, and also close the loop by feedback, so that things can be improved at those levels. So yeah, it's a combination of the three. Of course, in many circumstances, there is overlaps between these applications. There's some level of overlap. Okay. And it's okay. So we need to understand what the way the customer wants to work with things. And there are different aspects that can be a little bit more on the ERP level, or a little bit more on the MES level. And that's why, systems like ours are quite modular, so that we can define the right level of interfacing, which makes sense for a given setting.
Yeah. And you also, I would imagine, have to be very flexible in the sense that you're connecting and working with various different software and hardware programs, hardware being the different equipment in the factories and what you have, and the software being these different point solutions, if you would, with that. Speak to that and how kind of the complexity that you have to manage there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let me put it this way. First of all, when it comes to the integration with software, there's a lot of evolution of software in the past years. And especially the ones that we see more often, like the integration with PLM and ERP that you referred to. There's other types of software, of course, that we end up integrating with. For those, we wanted to make a product that at the end could be, easily configured. That integration could be easily configured, easily maintained, and that's it was not just the vendor that would have to code whenever something would be needed. And for that, there was a revolution, I think, in the past years, which is called low code. And we have several low code solutions across the application. And one of them, which is actually coming now on V10, is the enterprise low code integration solution. And the idea is really to empower people inside the factories, the customers, the domain owners is how we call them, allow them to not necessarily having to understand in depth how IT systems work, but allow them to be the ones that through configurations, through dragging and dropping of different elements, can perform such integrations. Okay, so this is one area which is extraordinarily developed. The other one, which is the integration to equipment, it's interesting because electronics is probably one of the most difficult areas in the world in this area. And why? Because there's so many different standards. It's like if you go to semiconductor, standards are complicated, but there are standards. So it's SECGEM is a standard on semiconductor. If you go to other industries, there's OPC, OPC UA, OPCDA, this type of standards. If you go into the more IoT, directly IoT integration, you have, Bluetooth Low Energy, MQTT, or things like that.
Yeah.
If you go to electronics SMT, you have 200 or 300,
Exactly.
depending on the types. And yes, there are attempts now with IPCC-FX and things like that to bring new standards, and hopefully this will proceed. But for the time being, they're just one additional one on top of all the standards that already existed. And so this calls for an architecture, which is what we have in our equipment integration layer. Our equipment integration layer is called Connect IoT. And the Connect IoT has drivers. And so essentially what we need to do is we do a driver for each of these type of protocols that we need to integrate with at the machine level. And then again, based on low code solutions, we do the automation workflow. So what this integration is supposed to do, what type of bidirectional information we send to one side or the other, what is the information that we send to the analytics data lakes, if something happens, if a threshold is goes above a certain threshold, do we need to send a stopping message or an alarm message back to the equipment? All of these things are done at this level. But again, the essence is SMT is complex. Because of the number of different equipment and integrations which is needed. And overall integration-wide, the low-code solutions are here to stay and are here to make the job much easier, not only for the first implementation, but mostly even for subsequent changes, maintenance, and so on, so that there's a certain autonomy level of the people inside the customer, inside the factories, to be able to do some of these things themselves.
Yeah, got it. Now you referenced the V10, and before I get to that, I do want to ask, or allow you to brag a little bit too. You were recognized by Gartner for the third consecutive year as a leader in the 2023 Gartner Magic Quadrant for MES. So that's 3 years in a row. That's obviously is a testament to the product that you've brought to market and continue to refine. Tell me, though, what that means for your customers on that side, and how important is that for them?
Yeah, it's very important, just because it's not just maybe people that are not really into this, they don't understand it's not just a scoring. So there's a very significant process behind, thorough process, long one, and so it's challenging to be there. It's quite challenging to be there. It's even more challenging to maintain the position that we are maintaining.
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's a number of things that we need to do. So there's the different vendor briefings in which we explain to the analysts the different features of the software, what it does, and so on. There's intensive questionnaires in which we go through all sorts of details about how the solutions are built. But then there's customer feedback. There's a bunch of reports that need to be done based on customer feedback using a platform that exists in Gartner, and then there's the calls that they do directly with customers. And at the end, they do two things. In the Magic Quadrant, they assess the ability to execute. So is this company able to execute successfully an MES project? And on the other, how complete the vision is. And so this is what makes the two scorings, and finally then they position different companies within this Magic Quadrant. So yeah, I mean, there were initially, when we were there as leaders for the first time that we showed in this report, we were immediately leaders, and of course there was some eyebrows raised. Now after the third year, people are starting to understand that yes, there's some value in the solution. So it is extremely important for that. It's kind of a more or less independent assessment, which is done, which is better than any of us saying how great our company or our product is.
Right.
It's an independent entity assessing this. So it's great, but it's quite challenging, and we need to keep working like we've been working in order to maintain it, because we have the feeling that it's becoming more challenging every year.
Yeah, no, you've set the bar high. That's excellent. And I appreciate your comments about the process there, because as we know, I mean, there's various awards. It depends on how much you contribute. It depends on whether you get an award. And I always like the ones that go to the customers, because that's where the proof.
No, I can tell you something which is very interesting, which is all the time they come up with the scoring at the same time for all the vendors, and they have an escalation process that you can go through if you don't agree with the scoring or the assessment. Okay. All I know is that from all the years that I participated, the final results were exactly the same as they were in the very beginning. Okay, so no matter how much pressure they get from the different vendors, we're talking about, very large corporations, they don't, they keep, if they do a good job, they do a very thorough job, and so they keep the scorings and the results till the end.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Now, I do want to get to your news about the V10. You've recently released version 10 of your MES system. Kind of, what improvements did you make, and how is this version better than, say, V9?
Yeah, so it's interesting that we started in 2009 and we're now with a V10, and so just with the major versions, you can grasp how much investment is being done in terms of R&D year after year. And there's always two levels of improvements that we do. There are the technology improvements that we do. And this is where we have introduced things like the ability to deploy the solution into cloud, on-prem, or hybrid environments. I think we have a pretty unique way of doing this. It's where we put new things like our IoT data platform, which is quite complementary to the MES system. So they are really interconnected, because something which is not very well understood still in the market is that you have all these IoT things that collect data from equipment and from some sensors and from other data sources. But if you don't have the contextual layer of an MES, you kind of end up very short in the analysis that you can do, because you need a lot of additional parameters, a lot of additional variables to come up with intelligent algorithms, to use machine learning and so on. So the innovation in terms of technology is something that we do on our own. And then there's no magic. We work with our customers. We work with our customers across the different segments for the functional perspective. And so we hear what they say. And we have some strategies which are interesting. For instance, we have a customer voting system. There's features and they vote on features. And so immediately, they not only propose and vote their features, they lobby between themselves, so that they start voting for the others and score higher, so that they get their things implemented, right? So, and it's done like that by design, right? It's really, this is the way we can find out what are the things that are really important and what are the things that apply across multiple customers. So things that are new on V10 beyond this. I mean, we have things like we finally have a bot in the system, which is something which we like very much. And the bot is more than the chat GPT things that everyone talks about. But it's how can you, without necessarily knowing the system and entering a complex system, interact with it without needing to understand all the details, all the menus, all the screens. You can simply say, I want to see, where material XYZ is. I want to move this into something else. I want to start a maintenance activity in a certain machine, right? And you can do this using voice or using written natural language. And I think, we are changing the perspective on how to interact with such a system. So this is one. This also plays very nicely into something that we have already, which is an augmented reality way of interacting with the system. And so the way it works is very simple, is we have a low-code solution. We using the low-code, we create the user interface for a given step. Then using a tablet, a phone, smart glasses, whatever, we identify a given entity inside the shop floor, being it like an equipment machine or a material. And then the same UI that we have created pops up in the screen, and we interact with it. Okay, so it's fairly easy, and it shows how easy these kind of things can be. For the more functional perspectives, we've introduced, and especially for the SMT area, for the electronics SMT, so there's many things which are specifically for semiconductor or for some other industries. We've introduced BOM variants, particularly for resolving the LED pairing scenario, which is something that a lot of systems struggle with. So you have LEDs with brightness variances, and you need to only in real time you can understand what type of resistor you can add to these to align the brightness of different LEDs, for instance, so that you can have the same brightness on your car headlights.
Yeah.
And for that, then the amount of different BOM structures will be infinitive. And so it needs to be resolved in real time. Needs to be added on real time, and that's the BOM variant, functionality. We have added the ability to report material defects directly on ECAD drawings, for instance, for this type of industries. Something which is a little bit more of broader use, but something that we don't see very often, is the ability to have functions, roles inside manufacturing, which are trainee roles. So we can introduce, there's a new trainee, and so the new trainee is operating a certain machine, and so that he can do that job, he needs to have some sorts of validation by his manager. So he can do still a certain number of operations, but it requires automatically the manager to go there and validate. I don't know, though there's so many things, you know, there's the local options that I mentioned to you before. You know, there's really a huge amount of things. And again, you know, it's just something adding to the different the portfolio which we already have. And what's important is that some of these things, again, are made specifically because our customers in this industry, and in electronics SMT in particular, are the ones that are pushing us to increase the number of the functionality in this area. And I believe at the end we have a really competitive, with, like I said before, with broad set of features, and that goes in depth into them.
Yeah. And I appreciate that with the customer feedback and then how they get to vote and choose and kind of what the changes are. And it just strikes me that what you're doing is you're making this very complex environment very, I don't want to say user friendly, but you're letting a user on the other side of of the MES who's there on it, looking at dashboards, being able to make decisions a lot quicker and not having to kind of, you're making the complex more comprehensible, so to speak.
Yeah. So it's a difficult equation, but this is something that that is driving us all the time, which is how simple can we make this complex system be?
Yeah, that's the genius of it, right? Yes. It's Now tell me too, you know, the industry, as we're talking about it, it has all kinds of challenges, and there's trends going on there. We've had the recent material supply chain issues for the last few years. We see demand fluctuations. Some demand people think is softening now after last year. You know, we have issues with NPI you referred to. We talk about new standards, whatever those are. There's so much to that. How does critical manufacturing help customers then address all these industry challenges?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that, for instance, functionality like advanced planning and scheduling, and with the ability to run different scenarios, to use multiple criteria for optimization, is one of the ways we help. It's the you know, when you have a situation in which, you know, you want to optimize your production floor so that you maximize the throughput of a machine, so that's one scenario. But you might have another scenario, which is how quickly can I get this one-off material, one-off product out of my factory, and when can this be delivered? You know, and it's the mixture of this criteria that in the advanced planning and scheduling solution that we have allows customers to use. And the importance of this is that this is not an external system. So this is a system that is all the time interconnected. I mean, I can even say even interconnected because it's part of the same system, but it always has the latest and greatest information in the right level of granularity about what's really happening on the shop floor, so that we can have in real time, all the time, the right information. Then you need to think that, you know, we're not just covering the SMT line, but, you know, all the processes that go from, you know, before and after the line, so covering the entire spectrum. And all of this information is made completely transparent. So this gives, at the supply chain level, a tremendous visibility, and the ability to compensate some of these, you know, disturbances which might occur. Then you're right, NPI is also a very important aspect, so that we can quickly introduce new products. And sometimes not just a new product, it's the new processes as well. So we have things like, we have functions that are very common in the semiconductor world, for instance, that are now starting to be used in the electronics world, which is things like experiments management, where we try to have a formal process for trying process variations. This is essential as well, so that when you want to change things a little bit more drastically, you have a formal way of doing that, collecting the results and seeing if it works or not, and if it should be deployed or not at the end. So these are some of the areas that we use in order to help some of these disturbances, some of these trends that are occurring. And the other thing is that if something is really important, then it starts from our customers in bringing them as an input for the product roadmap, and then it's all about the pace, right? It's can we get out a new feature that customers are requesting us into the next release within with a certain number of months in distance. If we can, then we are contributing very seriously to the resilience that customers want to have upon this type of disturbances that might occur.
Yeah. Listen, I know that there's a lot more of the functionality within the system that we could talk about, and I would, for the audience and people listening, I would say that you did issue a press release related to V10 here a couple weeks ago. We ran it on EMS Now too. Take a look at that. Go to their site, because it gives a lot more details about some of the changes and upgrades that happen there. Before we end, though, I do want to give you an opportunity here. I know you have an upcoming event coming on September 7th and 8th in beautiful Porto, Portugal. It is the MES and Industry 4.0 International Summit. Tell us a bit about that, what it covers, and who should attend.
Yeah, very good. So we wanted to make the largest event for MES professionals in Europe, and I think we will be able to achieve that. Our target is to have between 500 to 600 people inside in this MES event, and we are bringing top industry leaders and manufacturing experts from around the world. And the thing which is interesting is that it's not, we are not the ones doing this. So we're not selling the solution. Okay, just to be clear about that. So these are people from the industry, from medical devices, from SMT electronics, from semiconductor, explaining their challenges, explaining their digital transformation journeys, and explaining how MES and Industry 4.0 has helped them doing that. So we're starting to announce the different speakers. We have a great lineup that slowly will become visible. And then again, it's 2 days. It's in this beautiful city of Porto, World UNESCO Heritage City, and it's a great get together for people that want to discuss their experiences in these areas. And what I would like to say is that this is a it's of course made by us, but it's not necessarily commercial in this sense, right? So the idea is really to discuss the topic so that people can learn from each other, can exchange ideas and strategies, and at the end, bring MES implementations and Industry 4.0, one step further into the successful realization.
Excellent. Sounds like a good event, and like I said, in a beautiful spot too. So good. So people who are interested,
Eric, we're counting on you here.
We will. I will say that for people who are interested, please look up that I know we have a posting on our site for the event that people can link through to. They do have a website associated with it. I would point you there for ongoing information. If you're interested, please reach out and to participate. Francisco, it has been a real pleasure to meet you today, to get this chance to learn more about critical manufacturing and what an impressive solution you have and continue to refine as this industry we all love and work in continues to advance. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much,
for your
Eric.
time. And I hope we can catch up again later in the year and get an update.
Very good, especially after the event.
Exactly right. Very good, sir.
Thank you so much,
Francisco.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.